Father, thank you so much for the opportunity given us again to fellowship here. Be with us now as we continue to learn how to study diseases and ultimately follow your lead, dear Father. Thank you so much. In your name I pray, Jesus. Amen. Amen. All right, we're back at a second session here in How to Study Disease Lab. We picked out quite a few ailments. We learned that a lot of them are pretty much related in one way to another, to a different one. We learn here in Nature's Healing Way that the mind controls the what? The body. When you study in the chapter the use of remedies as well, it also follows that similar principle. When one part of the body is hurt, then the others do what? They sympathize. When one hurts, the other sympathize. So everything in general is more or less related. This is just how the body works. And they make up for each other. So when one is suffering, the other one has to work even what? Harder. But if that process continues and it stays in that state, what's going to happen eventually? The other one who's trying to pick up the slack, he's just going to give up. So we'll see that. So we learned also in the first part here that when studying the disease, you have to pick out the top 10. Then you narrow it down to 7. Then you think, oh man, if that was hard enough, I got to narrow it down again to 5. So I got to drop 2 more. Then I got to drop another 2 more, get down to at least your top 3, get to your top 1. The one that you pick, all right, I know I just mentioned a little earlier, pick one that you're not familiar with, but in your personal study, for our class project, we want to pick one we're not familiar with. But in your personal study, choose one. So step number 2, choose the one of greatest what? Greatest interest. Don't waste your time studying about cold and flu when your mom is dying of cancer. Focus on something of greatest what? Interest. Something that may be affecting you. Focus on that one. Why are we choosing something that is of greatest interest to us? This is in our personal study. Number 1, it's a motivator. Everybody starts off hot. Start off hot. You ever been to Evangelistic Series or Prophecy Revival? You start off hot. Daniel 1. Yeah, can't wait. Daniel 2. Revelation 2:14. You just knocking it out. You studying every day and then something comes up, you kind of what? I'm like, yeah, Lord, I catch up with you here. Then it falls off here, falls off here. Now I know none of y'all do that. Amen. Josh looking at me like, nah, not me, brother. See, I keep pushing. He keep pushing. But even Josh ain't doing his homework sometimes because he's focusing on something else. So he's even focusing on something of greatest what? Interest to himself. I be hearing these brothers. All right? So pick something of greatest interest. That'll give you the staying power, if I can say, because you will want to learn more about it. You'll be very interested in it. However, in this class, I want you to pick something that you're unfamiliar with, so we can be a well-rounded group. The reason why I want you to be a specialist in that area, so when we do presentations and stuff, somebody's like, oh, you don't have thyroid or whatever like that. I'm like, look here, ma'am, we're not going to be talking on that today, but I just want to let you know that we have a specialist in-house. His name is Donovan. Donovan focuses on this. Now, he's not going to give you diagnosis or things or whatever, but he's the one that studied. He studied natural remedies and different items that will maybe helpful on that topic. Y'all follow where I'm going with that? If we all sharpen diabetes, then we just be moving one diabetes truck, just like this. But now we are a well-rounded team. We can easily say, oh, this young lady here, she's the allergy specialist. She's the healthy lifestyle resource allergy specialist. She has a partner, his name is Joshua. He is also a specialist in that as well, even though that he wanted it to be his first topic of study, but somewhere along the line, he was distracted. All right? Y'all follow where I'm going with this? So in class, we're doing different ones, but at home, pick the one of greatest interest. Okay? Next quick step here. We didn't do this, though. We didn't get down to our last 10. All right? What else? What else you think is common? Here's the key. You have to find this common ground. You want to pick something that's interesting, but you may be interested in how the willow bark tree gets people sick. Let that be your like kind of hobby type study, you know what I mean? Because that may not be what? Common. So pick something that's common, of greater interest. And so let's look at some other common ones. What are some other common ones? Because we're down to about 5 here. 2, 4, 6, 7. Who? Hypertension. So we have a hypertension specialist. And what else? Addictions. So that's ADD. Addictions is very, very good. Thyroid is good as well. It's not as common, but it is related. I thought you were picking that one. Oh yeah, is a lot of people interested in thyroid afflictions? Have you noticed that, Donovan? You threw that idea out there.
Yeah, I know a lot of people.
Yeah? Thyroid, okay. If it's common.
60% of Americans are affected by it some way.
Mercy. All right. So let's look at that. How many is that? 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We already have 10. Is there any in that list that we want to change up?
I think fibroids are very important. A lot of women are coming down with that.
Okay. Who's studying cancer? She was just mentioning that fibroids may be a big item. I think here's what we want to do though. The person who studies in this area, they're gonna run into that. You follow? Who's that? You doing cancer?
I'm doing depression.
All right. All right, for those who are trying to understand what's going on here, Chanel just finished fighting down Joshua, beat him up so she can take allergies. Then the Holy Spirit convict her that she wasn't right about doing that. So she picked depression. All right. So we have Michelle. You're doing that one. Chanel. You're doing that. All right. And pick whose allergies. That's you, Josh.
Did we already assign like that?
Okay. Now, real quick. You did ADD. We got that. Now, who? Addictions. Okay. So you're gonna be doing addiction, ADD, diabetes. Wanda. Yeah, my brother Lexington. He got up on that. Now, real quick, we're going to finish through this. We're going to finish through this for recording purposes. I just want for everybody to see that when even people at home, when you have a team or something, you pick a team and everybody try to pick a different topic. So that when one person is presenting, even though that wasn't the topic you discussed or you learned and you researched, you're what? You're learning. Everybody preaching on diabetes, we just, you know what I mean? Or everybody preaching on allergies, it doesn't. So we're all going to now help each other to cover more ground. So that was the purpose of that. Some of y'all voiced your opinions, not opinions, but your selections. So just confirm that at the end. And these are the topics that you're going to be studying. Make sense? So now that you've found greatest interest, this is what you do. Step number 3, in regards to studying the disease, study the system first. Don't just dive into the thing and you just study the system. How does the system work? Because once you get into that disease, or I give you a quick item, study a quick synopsis of the ailment. This is what the ailment is. This is how it affects people. This is how many people is affected. It affects this system. Boom. Once you hear that, then you study the what? System. So let's pick one. I'll give you an example. Diabetes. Okay? So all of this. Who is this area? This is Wanda, right? Wanda. Now, if y'all notice what I'm doing here. So even though,
And can I change mine to heart?
all right, I think the virus is starting to spread. People are changing topics. We'll focus on the changes and stuff like that later. So watch this. Whoever picks anyone in this area, high blood pressure, you focus on that, but then you also start to see the relation because all of this in general works with the what? The kidneys and the heart. So study how the system works. How did the Lord create? You pick one, Wanda. You said diabetes. We're going to look at this for example. Diabetes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here to one of my resources in my library. So everybody make sure you have a library of resources that are well compiled there. These are the things that you're going to be using. This one you'll use, or you can refer people as well to these presentations. You have the DVDs at, because some people like to hear it and stuff. And so that's cool. You can refer them to the DVD and they can purchase it that way. I usually look up the diseases. So diabetes, when I look up diabetes, it sends me over. It says here diabetes falls on a category of the metabolic process. So what process, or if I could put it here, what system is this referring to? All right. I'm making a mess in my library. And if you go to somebody's library and all the books are stacked perfectly properly, they may not be using it, all right? So diabetes is page 288. I'm going to go here. This is just a little quick reference item. So we're going to study the disease 288. Here it is. Foods for metabolism. So the metabolic system. How your body handles foods that is coming in. How does it break it down? How does it distribute? All right, so what system? Metabolic. This so-called diabetes is a disorder of the metabolism of glucose. It is quite common in Western countries. In reality, this term includes two diseases whose common characteristic is an elevated level of sugar in the what? In the blood, the metabolic system. Okay? So, then it's going to talk about type 1 diabetes, type 2, what the problem is, what the complications is. So you get your little synopsis, and then you go and you study how the system what? How does it work normally? So then, now where am I getting this from? How does it work normally? You want to know how it works normally. So when you see something out of what? Out of line, out of the norm, that's usually where the problem starts to develop. So what happens out of the norm? The body doesn't handle the sugar properly. The sugar comes what? It stays elevated in the blood. Is elevation of sugar in the blood bad? No. When we study it, it's actually a normal thing, but it stays what? Elevated. So this is out of the norm. This is very valuable for you to study this. I met many people, they study the disease so much, they actually start to think that that's how the body works. Because they never studied the real thing. They never studied how the Lord intended it to be. So when you study how he intended it to be, anything out of the norm, you say, hey, watch it. Just like these principles. Because you know your principles so well, when a new pill or herb or something comes out, if it doesn't fall in line with the what? The norm of how the Lord intended it, then you know something ain't right there. How can you tell a counterfeit from the real stuff? You just know the real stuff. That principle applies even to studying diseases. So we're going to study the system, how it functions, and then what disables it from working normally. Yeah? So I'm going to study when it comes to diabetes, and Wanda, you're getting a good head start on this. I'm going to study what happens when I eat food. How does it break down? So I'm going to look at the digestion. Where does digestion begin? In the mouth. You sure it doesn't start in the stomach? It starts in the mouth. I'm going to learn how the mouth adds enzymes to it to help break it down. As it passes through digestion, the sphincters are going to open up. Then food comes in. Then the churning process begins. Then some food is broken down here. The water is absorbed there. Some food is broken down in the intestine. You know, you need the bile from the gallbladder to help with the breaking down of fats. You know, general items break down here. And then that whole process. Okay, cool. Now you don't get stuck. Here's the problem with studying how the system works. We get caught up in a tangent. The Lord has put this is why it's fearfully, wonderfully made. He made this system so tight, you will get stuck before the food even get into the mouth in your study. You be stuck on a farm trying to figure out what makes the food grow, and then why does it provide these nutrients. Then when you get to the mouth has so many millions of ways that it does its job, how the saliva is secreted. Then you may get caught up in how people start developing cavities, and then you just get lost. Always remember, your point is what? Diabetes. So stay focused, okay? It just adds certain enzymes that breaks it down. The sphincter's open because you could get stuck right here with acid reflux. The sphincter acting crazy. Then you go and you say, okay, this is normal. Now what is diabetes? Here's the abnormal. Okay? And then you'll see the relationship between that and extra blessings. Yes, question.
Be able to stay on point, right, and not get on a tangent.
All right. The question is, when studying these diseases, what questions do you ask so you don't get thrown off target? The main question is because let's look at diabetes, for instance. The problem is a problem with how the body handles the sugar, right? Okay. So I'm not going to focus too much on what happens here in the esophagus. I'm not going to focus too much. I'm going to learn about chewing food properly and all of that stuff. That's just a cool little fun thing to. But I'm going to learn when the food starts to break down into vitamins and nutrients. I'm going to focus on the transition of food into what? Glucose. Because the problem is not in general before that. The problem is when the transition happens. Where does this glucose? I want to get to the point of how that glucose enters into the blood. What causes the glucose to do what? Shoot up. What causes it to crash back down? Yep. Even the phones agree. Tell them, preach. Okay? So I'm going to focus on a couple items. Just the general outlay of the system, how it functions, what creates the disability. Then I'm just going to take a quick look at medical treatment. You have to learn what the medical system is doing. Not that we're going against it, but what are we trying to do?
Become well-rounded.
We become well-rounded and we're trying to work with them. This is what's going to set the Scenario Life Consultants apart. We are not fighting against the system. Actually, doc, nurse, we just want to assist. I just got a text from one of my buddies. He's a physician. He sent me this text. It's so funny because he practices down in Texas. And he sent me, it was just, Lord, help me pull it up real quick. Here it is. He said, man, you got to check this out. Thought you might be interested in this text from a cardiologist friend of mine. Secular health message in his office. So his cardiologist friend is now inviting other physicians to come. We are hosting a short reception for professionals who want to get our patients healthy and earn compensation while doing this. Please, RSVP ASAP. You ready for this? The doctors even know. They're like, look, man, the times is turning. There's a curve there. They're wanting to work. The reason why the doctors get this bad rap or whatever, it's not the doctors have a bad rap. It's that people just do some renegade stuff. You sick? Oh, man, take 2 pieces of bush and mix it with this and boil this tea and drink this and bend over 10 times, lean on your neck, half of the day, all kind of crazy stuff. And doctors like, look, you getting more sick by doing that than if you just follow what I'm doing here. So they're just trying to protect, in general, you. And yes, they are giving you medication, and there may be some contraindications. But look, even the doctors, cardiologists, in some of the biggest places right there in Texas, I won't tell you the exact location, but they're even saying, look, come, we're going to work with you. Of course, we're going to make sure we get a little something, we're going to let you see our patients and stuff, but let's work together. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at the medical ways that the treatments, how they treat and how they maintain it. We're then going to look at collaborative. You can mix it up any way you want. You can do alternative first, so you can see that one. I think that's probably good. You see the medical way, you see the extreme, and then you focus on collaborative. Because
What do you mean by extreme?
not extreme. Oops. Alternative. Well, alternative means kind of sort of, look, we're going to do the total opposite. This is another totally different option. So you have medical, you have alternative, and then you have collaborative. Which brings the two together. Y'all got that? Then you have ours, which in general is natural remedies. Not per se natural remedies, but education. So these are just some different areas you want to look at this paper. You want to do it in such a way, you want to look at how it affects society, but don't get too wrapped up in numbers. Get some general figures, you know what I mean? How is diabetes starting to relate to the people now? What was it some years ago? And what is the outlook? What is the outlook? So where is diabetes now, and how is it affecting our society right now? Did it exist some time ago? Where is its origins? When did they start seeing signs of diabetes? So in your case with diabetes, the stuff been around since the Egyptians. Then you want to look at what? Where's it heading? What's the prognosis? What's the outlook? How is diabetes going to affect America by 2020? That's it. Don't get caught up in the numbers. The coefficient percentage of the people who have been affected at one point as they started this, and then they reversed their lifestyle, and then the determining factor of the relational disproportion of the assessment of our experimental model of the control group compared to the what? Have you ever noticed that though? You ever been to a health presentation? They get out and they start showing these charts. At first it's kind of cool. Like, wow, as the grid goes, this amount of people will get it. Then they just take it to the next level. Now let's stop right here on this grid. Now what we're going to do, we're going to pull a segment of this population of study of people, and we're going to show you how it went. All right, that's enough, Doc. You hit me one statistic, but the whole time the statistics is nonstop. We want to focus now on what? Practical, natural things that they can do. And what are some management methods? What have they been doing? What are they going to do? What's the outlook on it? You want to immerse yourself in this ailment that you will be able, watch this now, you want to give a good presentation on it, but you want to be able to give a presentation for those who, because you may go to a diabetic association. And if you go up in there talking about there's only 2 types of diabetes, they're like, this person is dated in their study. There's actually like 8 of them. And they'll listen to you. No, excellent, thank you. Good presentation. Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate your smile. All right, thank you. Yeah. And she don't know what she's talking about. And then they'll move on. So it's good. So you'll be able to talk in that jargon or that lingo, but then you must, the focus in our work is to bring it down to practical level. We want to have the knowledge of these things, but be able to break it down that even the children could understand. One little tip that I do when doing presentations, if I'm working on a new presentation, I develop it, I do all the research, and I make it so simple. I go to the local Adventist Academy, and I'm like, hey, I go to the health teacher. Like, hey, I want to teach, the class. I have this new topic or whatever, and I present it to the instructor. I show them the research, but I said I make it really simple, and I write out maybe a little pointer or two, bring some visual aids, and I present it to the little kids. If the little kids can understand how I present, what I'm talking about, when I'm done, they'll be able to go home and teach their mom and dad about diabetes. Then you know your presentation is ready for the real world. Yes?
Do you teach it to the adults the way you teach it to them?
Do I teach it to the adults the way I teach it to the kids? Yes and no. I keep the language very simple to the adults, but, I don't be like, hey, so what you do is you take the apple, when the apple goes into this, I won't do that. I'll do that for the kids, though. But I will talk in language very simple. I'll stay away from the big words, like how you remember how we were just talking about benign and metastasize. Some adults don't know what benign means. And kids, in general, won't know what benign means unless one of their parents have cancer. So what do you have to say? Do you remember how I just explained benign and metastasize? Benign means it stays in one local area. It stays, forget local. That's even still a little complicated for kids. You say benign tumors, they stay right at that one area, at that one location, at that one point. So if they find it here, then it usually stays what? There. So the kids are like, oh, so the cancer doesn't move? Well, it's not that it's the cancer, it's just benign. Or it just stays in that area, so it doesn't walk around the place. Then how do I teach metastasize? I said, then it starts to creep and starts to spread out like the claws or like a spider web, or it starts to go all around the place. And that's basically, when you look at it under a microscope, that's what it does. So I explained that in a quick but nice way to adults, just like how I explained it to you all earlier about benign and what? Metastasizing. But when you're in a professional medical area, in general, they know what benign is. Don't be going to the doctors be like, benign, where, what that means when it stays right there and doesn't move from that area. They were like, is this person serious? So you have to talk, and that's what this research paper is going to do for you. Okay? Does that make sense? So you find that nice little balance there. Yes?
In terms of the paper, do we address like the other things that are related to diabetes, or how do we go about doing that?
In terms of the paper, do we address other topics?
Right.
Like obesity?
Like diabetes, as it's related to obesity or glaucoma or abscess on the foot or something.
Yes, of course. You mentioned these are some of the complications. It can affect the eyes, and you just showed a quick process. This is how diabetes affects the eyes. It destroys some of the arteries, the capillaries. You start to have these bursting going on. You start to lose the eyesight there. Also, because of that, the peripheral nerves, or the nerves, what does peripheral mean? Furthest away, they start to deaden because the same process happens, and that's why you have to be careful with the foot care. So you can mention that 2 or 3 sentences on those different items. These are some of the complications. Bam, 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 bam. So people can know when you're presenting, oh, man. Do you know most people, when they don't know they have diabetes from like almost 8 to 10 years, those numbers probably changed. I've been saying that for the past 2 years. So you have to give, of course, the signs, the symptoms, complications, all right? That's what I'm telling you. This actually 4 to 5 pages is very little for what we're trying to do here. But what I want us to do, I don't want to do a big one where it's just an exhaustive thing and then we all miss the point. The point is, give this pertinent items, study it well, and then give the solution. So how do we study the solution now? Okay, the natural remedy. You see what works, and in general, that's why I put management there, because most methods in society is just to what? Manage the problem. There's a couple reasons. Sometimes they may not know things to get rid of the problem. And another thing is, if you get rid of all of these problems, then there's no, per se, money to make. It's a couple of things. I don't bring judgment. It's just these are some of the reasons, okay? Then I go into, not alternative, but I go into the natural resource. So how do I do it here? What I do is I look up, so let's say diabetes is going to show us what we need to increase and what we need to decrease. These are the foods that needs to be what? Increased, and these are the foods that need to be what? Decrease, reduce, or eliminate. A simple way I tell people how to do that, hey, do you want to control a problem or get rid of it by God's grace? Most people say, I want to get rid of it. Then I start talking about the things that need to be eliminated. They're like, well, ice cream? You serious? No, keep a little bit of the problem away. No, keep a little bit of the problem. No problem, enjoy the ice cream. But you could get rid of it with all these other items. Yes?
Is there a special way you want us to do the research? Is there sites you want us to go to and sites you don't want us to go to?
That's what we're going to look at here is resources. Okay? So the first resource, you have to study the what? The real thing, and before you get caught up with the counterfeit. So study what the truth is, and then you're not studying the other stuff, you're just looking at what are the methods that they are using. When you look there in Ministry of Healing and Life of Jesus, he was able to talk to them on things that they were interested in. You think that stuff just popped in his head? He probably hung around a couple of people. Yeah, how's it going? Yeah. So tell me about what you do. Yeah, well, I'm a mechanic, and I work on door hinges. Mechanics at that time, I don't know what it probably was. Or I work on how to develop the mill, to break down the rice. And so, wow, that's interesting. So how does that work? Well, this is how you do it. Man, how do you put that together? Do you know you can learn about something and not even have to study it? You just go to somebody who's already successful in what they do. That's called apprenticeship. And they tell you everything about it. One thing I've learned, because I if I can say this in a cool way, I hate studying. It's just too much time, and I ain't got time for it. So what I try to do, when somebody's presenting on that thing, I sit right here at the front, and I just say, everything else, go aside, and let me just focus, learn. Because once I get out this class, there's no promise when I'm going to get back to the studies. So I learn as much as I can, and I associate it with things that are common to me. When they talking about some crazy mechanical stuff, I just think of, how I turn on my phone. I just start to relate that. You press one button, and they're talking about, well, you take the calibrator and put it here. So I'm like, this phone button right here is my calibrator. When I switch it like this, I'm warming it up. You know what I mean? So I associate it to things that I am used to. So now when it's time for a test, it was like, how does that machine work again? You press the button, that's the calibrator. You switch it like this to warm it up. You ever follow that? There's a special name for it. It's like mnemonics or something, where you associate something, a memory process, with something that you're familiar to. All right? So how do we do it? You first start with the resource that you know has been studied by your physicians. So I look up the things we need to increase, but then don't just look up, oh yeah, beans, veggies, whole grains, fruits, nuts, and artichoke is good for you. Great. Why? How? Okay, so what I hear everybody asking is a couple of pointers here. So the study system, step number 4 has a couple steps of how to do it. Who? Who's the who in the topic we were talking about? Diabetes. What does it do? It affects the system and the proper metabolism or the functioning of sugar in the blood. How does that process work? What are we doing? We're studying the systems. How a normal system works and stuff. And then we understand why is it working outside of the norm.
So what is
Who
the diabetes?
is diabetes? So there are many different types of diabetes. So you look at the different variation. What does it do? It causes some complications. Your foot get cut off. Your eyes go blind. All of these things. How does it do that? What it does, it messes up with the peripheral nervous. This is how normal system does it. Why is similar to that. And also you can look at, or why does it do it and how? How can we reverse and eliminate the problem? What are some treatments there? Either or. That's basically it. So you want to give yourself a solution. Does that make sense? And the last step is in your natural, you looked at the foods, what's good and what's bad, but you have to help people now. So how are they going to get better? How are they going to take care of themselves? Then you look at the foods that's good, look at the foods that they should avoid, and then what do? You put together a what? Somebody help me out real quick. I know we had the a solution. You put together a plan for them. So So what I want us to do is put together a menu plan. Is that simple enough? You do this properly, you'll be able to consult with anybody in that area. You actually show them what to do now. A lot of people sell you on the problem, but they don't give you a solution to it. We're giving solutions. So don't get caught up too much in the problem. Just understand why it does what it do, how does that work, and then you focus now on what we can do. Yes?
Do you want us to incorporate the plan into the paper or like underneath the paper, this is your meal plan?
That's like discharge teaching. So that means like you have the wealth of the paper there, you start on the education, and the menu plan is just an addition to that. That's why if you notice there, on E, in the whole coursework, you have meal preparation, because that's per se outside of it. Now you can put which foods is good, how they affect the body, but then you just draw up a quick little menu plan. And we'll do that in tomorrow in consultations. So you ready for this? So look at this. This puts together breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then it shows us real quick the health counsels on each topic. What does this do for you there? How is that going to be helpful? Why is radishes and carrots and all of this spinach, why are they good for the eyes? Because it provides provitamins and carotenoids. It fights against skin dryness, dermatitis, as you see here. This thing is also good for cancer. That's real simple. So how does that work? You put together breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have the food groups. What are some specific fruits that they can use for breakfast? What are some specific veggies they can use for lunch? What are some specific grains that they can use for breakfast? What are some specific grains that they can use for lunch? What are some nuts to follow a complete diet they can use to help balance out their sugars? What are some nuts or some natural fats that they can use for lunch? If it's a diabetic, to digest. Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? Actually, I think we already did the paper.
Check your microphone. Something happened.
Do I change my position?
You can move.
That one went up.
Yeah. I don't know why it's not getting the signal. It's supposed to be fine.
All right. So you can do that real quick. Any questions? What happened there? Keep it close.
What's your specialty?
My specialty? I don't know anymore. I should, and I'm actually going to pick a topic myself. Whatever topic y'all want, I'll pick. And I'll do a research paper myself. Alright? Okay. Almost done. Thank goodness today is Monday, huh? Alright, ready, set, go. Alright, cool. So we went over the general working of the paper. Is there any other questions? This is just general study tips that you should do. So you study the system, you know who, what, why, and how, and then my chalk disappeared, and then you focus on the last step here. Number 5, the solution. And that's already incorporated in some of this here, but you want to do the solution, put together a plan for a person. Don't spend too much now on selling the problem. A lot of times we spend a lot of time on that, and when it's time for the solution, yeah, what you want to do is eat fruit, nuts, grains, and veggies. God bless you. Have you ever noticed that? Some presentations, they just, this is bad, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. What's the solution? Fruits, grains, nuts, and veggies. The diet that the Lord chose for you. Any other questions? You're like, nah, I ain't got no question, man. Thanks a lot. You know what I mean? But they already know that they're in a bad situation. You just want to hit on some points that helps them to understand why these things happen. You know what I mean? Because if you understand why they happen, or if I could put it like this, if people know how they got sick, then they know how not to get sick.
Say that one more time.
If people know how they got sick, then they will know how not to get sick. If I learn what caused these allergies, maybe I was stressed out, maybe I was overworking, maybe I predisposed myself to something too much, then automatically you know in the future that you don't what? Overwork. Predispose yourself to too much of these problems. Let me show you here real quick. And then you can avoid the problem. I found a simple way in teaching people as well. I teach people how to get sick, and naturally they'll do the opposite. You ever tell people, don't do that? What do they end up doing? They actually go and do that. It's just, I think Jesus got a hold of that too. He realized if I tell people what not to do, they actually do it. So what did Jesus start doing? You could choose ye this day, choose ye righteousness. Or if you want to choose the other stuff, that's the wages of sin. That's what happens. Peace out. You ever notice that? Y'all looking at me weird again. When was the last time you seen Jesus say, look, what y'all need to do exactly this? He said, look, man, I just come in my Father's name. I'm just doing, the work that he has given me to do. I just come to help, and this is how I can help. Oh, you have a sickness or ailment? Would you like to feel better? He didn't say, look, what you need to do, you need to eat this, you need to eat that, you need to stop that foolishness or whatever like that. You want to try it? Cool, try it. Let me know how it works. And tomorrow we're going to look at that in consultations. But somewhere along the line, we just probably felt that it's just quicker to just tell people what to do. It's easier. It's actually easier to tell people what to do. It's harder to educate people. That's why I have the utmost respect for teachers. Because they have to toil and labor and to get people just to get the point. One of my friends says, somebody told her, man, there's a couple things. Either people, they'll get it. They won't get it. Some will never get it no matter how much you explain to them. So there's like three groups. Some that will get it, some that just won't get it, some that don't get it unless you explain it to them. Okay? So that's the direction that we are going to head with this project here. So I want us, as soon as class breaks, let's finalize these diseases. Let's put it up on the board, and let's decide who's going to do what.
You mentioned something about doing something tomorrow. Are we going to have time to work on this paper in class, or are we working on it at our own time?
It'll most likely be on your own time. We're not going to have labs all the time. Yeah? So, like today, we have off. Wednesday's a little challenge because we also have prayer meeting, and it's just that time is too quick. So on this Wednesday, I'm going to try to bump it up a little bit. We do have some case studies that I would like us to go through when we do the consultations, and it's very important. And the key with consultations, you have to hear it over and over and over, different stories, but at the end of the day, they all follow the same what? Principle, same foundation. And so these are some of the things that you will learn. Take advantage of the Fridays. I know we'll do outings and stuff, but we'll try to hold off on the outings, catch up on some study time. I know we all got to run. It's a really tight schedule, and I just want to encourage us. This is a 3-month intensive. Intensive was, there's a reason why it's intensive, because there's quite a bit of things that's going on. So the key is, what is the talent that God has given us that we have to be very mindful of? Time. Yeah. You had a question, Josh? You can tell it now.
Okay. We're not allowed to go out on Fridays, though?
All right, so Josh asked the question, can I still go out and knock on some doors on Fridays? You can. We'll just have to arrange it. We found there's some phenomenal business territory in Benton Harbor and St. Joe's area and here and in Niles. Because of our work schedule, we haven't been having a chance to hit up businesses. So now on a Friday afternoon or something like that, we can make a trip. People got to go up to Niles to do their thing. We could get you rolling. You could probably give somebody your money, give them your little thing. And you could go knock on some businesses as well. I think that would be vital because nobody really works businesses in the area. So, but real quick, in regards to the paper and your presentation, is there any questions on that? We'll probably bump up that date. I was saying the latest would be early November, like the beginning, but we may need to bump it up so we can put you in the rotation there at the churches because we at least start our first church coming up here in about 2 weeks. So we'll bump that up a little bit. And for others as well who are studying through this, do your paper as quick as possible so you will have the opportunity to go ahead and put it to use. Any other questions here? Does this make sense? How to study diseases, pick your top 10. You focus on your greatest interest, but also find a balance between that and common problems. Study the system, the pros and cons of that system. Who, what, why do these things happen? And then how we can resolve the situation by giving a good solution, all right? And these are some of the diseases. I put it in line so you can see which system it kind of falls into, who's related, so you're not all over the place. All right, so if you notice there in one of the resources, here's the last quick item. When you focus on that one thing, if you find out that alfalfa is good, study all about that alfalfa quickly, and then naturally, by default, you start to learn how it relates to other problems. Does that make sense? Give you an example. Alfalfa sprouts are rich in minerals, vitamins, and enzymes. Okay? The enzyme facilitates and helps digestion, assimilation of energy nutrients. What does that mean? Brings it all in together, so it allows it to work together. And carbohydrates and fats consumed with food. So it brings assimilation of energy nutrients consumed with food. So alfalfa is good for that. Energy nutrients, so this is for actually a person who is underblessed. So this is in that category. What else could this be good for, alfalfa? It facilitates what? Digestion. So it can help out with individuals who may be having digestive tract disorders. Now, I'm not saying that's what it does, but it's a possibility. You have to research a little bit more. So that's what I want you in general to do. And when you study one topic very well, then you'll start to see the relation to other ailments and diseases, especially when you start studying the foods. I don't have time to sit down and go through all of these. So what I do is I go through every part of it. When it shows me a reference, I go to that reference and I learn about it. I read about it. Most of your references, because we'll need a reference page because all of your stuff has to be documented. And research and credible resources. So let's look at those quick resources our last couple of minutes. Number one, we have our resources. Okay? Number two, there's the hugest resource out there now, and that's the what? The web. Okay? So what are some websites that work that are fairly decent with credible research? You have WebMD, Medscape. One of our consultants, she writes article for Livestrong. What is it, Chanel? Is it Livestrong? Yeah, I think Chanel agrees. Yeah. Livestrong.com. And what else? What are some good other sites that you found that was helpful in the past? Oh, the CDC. You want to just be a little careful of these little makeup websites, kind of, sort of. You know what I mean? If he was like, yeah, well, CDC is the official government organization. Even though sometimes those things may be just a tad skewed, they're less skewed compared to these other, personal websites that people put up because they at least have to fall under some general criteria of their research. Because they have even more scrutiny. You got a ton of watchdog companies watching them, and you know what I mean? So they have to put out decent stuff. One person said, well, what about SonariLife.com? Well, on Sonari Life, we can just put up some research articles that are well-founded. And at Sonari Life, we're not here to diagnose or reverse diseases. We're here to point them to stuff that has already been researched. You follow? We are resource consultants. So one day, Sonari Life will be the site where everybody needs to go to for answers or find out which resources they can get to answer many of the questions that many people have. That sounds like a canvas. All right? Any other questions? So we'll do that. And also, if you get a chance to ask somebody in the field, when you're at churches and stuff, you speak to a doctor, say, Doc, have you ever worked with this problem? What are some of the things that you've experienced as well?
Yeah, about amazing health. Amazing health.
Amazing health as well. Amazing health as well. Pretty good. All right, so now we understand disease, how to study it, the fundamentals. Let's go. We remember our little quick assignment for today. We just have to study those two chapters, Nature's Healing Way, chapters 14 and 17. Everybody has it there. Please study to show yourself approved. If you get a chance, take a quick look at the use of remedies. Use of remedies. Some of the excerpts are there, prayer for the sick in the ministry of healing. But a lot of the excerpts are put right there in Nature's Healing Way. Any other questions before we close?
So the reading is for what?
Tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah, it's some quick chapters there. All right, let us pray. Father in heaven, we've come today to finally just thank you for the principles that you have given us, where we can learn and we can study about different diseases and ailments there, Father, but not just focus on what they have done detrimentally to our bodies, but how, their Father, we can get a solution as well. I pray in a special way that we may take this information now, let it be a blessing to us and everybody else we come in contact with. In your name I pray, Jesus.